Another day goes by and another day with more info on the UFC fixed fight scandal, okay? The FBI is moving in and we have some new details about other people that could be involved and quite a bit more to talk about, okay? Not as much of a deep dive, but there is more info to cover. If this is your first time seeing my channel, my name is Wyatt and this is Fight Society. Let's get into it. All right, before we get into it, before you guys ask in the comments, yes, I have a black eye. I got poked in the eye in training last night by a dirty Dagestani rat. Yeah, it's funny. I defended Tom Aspinall's eye poke for weeks on end, and then now I have a black eye from getting poked in the eye in training. So that's out of the way. Now, starting with this post here from JJ Carvalho, Isaac Dulgarian is only the start of this gambling saga. And we've covered this a lot in the last 5 or so days. I made this is like my 4th or 5th video about the fixed fight scandal in the UFC. And there's even more information that has come out, starting with Harry Mack, the journalist that has broken a lot of the information via off-the-record secret sources, said that Factory X Muay Thai in Denver, the gym that Isaac Dulgarian was training out of, was raided by the FBI. Factory X made a statement and they said there is a false report circulating that Factory X has been raided by the FBI following the events of last weekend's UFC event. This is not true. The allegations that our gym had or has any sort of involvement in fight fixing last weekend or ever is both devastating and heartbreaking. This is a family-owned gym that has been in good standing in our community for over 15 years. We unequivocally stand by our innocence and at this time would welcome a visit from the FBI as we absolutely have nothing to hide. We understand and accept it is human nature to form opinions from the outside looking in, given the available information. We have no doubt the truth will prevail, justice will be served, and our good name will be restored. Until then, we welcome your prayers for our strength and peace. And Harry Mack clapped back immediately, saying, when I'm innocent and battling corruption allegations, I always invoke religion and call for prayers and unity. If we want to get technical, perhaps raid was the wrong choice of words, but the FBI conducted interviews and collected cell phone data from Factory X fighters. And Factory X responded to that, saying, news to us, we also welcomed prayers and peace, didn't invoke religion or ask for unity. To be technical when battling false corruption allegations, we actually do prefer facts. And Harry Mack's credibility is getting called into question because he did break some of the very, very early info regarding this case. And now Jason Herzog and Factory X are attacking his credibility. So far, Harry Mack's info has been good. Many people are going at him saying he won't reveal his sources. I had some secret sources myself, off the record sources that gave me some information, and people called my credibility into question when I didn't go public with who gave me the information. Apparently, people on the internet do not know any sort of journalistic integrity where you can't just give up a source that didn't give you the okay to give them up as a source. It's called off the record and on the record. You guys have heard this a million times. Sometimes you just have to decide for yourself if you're going to trust the journalist or the YouTuber, whoever's covering it, that they're telling the truth or not. You're going to have to come to your own conclusion. All right. So while this is just the tip of the iceberg, it may seem that Factory X and Mark Montoya hopefully are not implicated in this as well, because frankly, I went over the Mark Montoya interview on Ariel Helwani that he had just the other day. And I said in that video that I hoped Mark Montoya and Factory X had nothing to do with this. I've always thought Mark Montoya was a good coach and gave some of the best corner advice that I've seen to fighters live in fights. But his interview on Ariel Helwani was very, very suspicious in my opinion. And now Factory X is being called into question as well. So you guys are going to have to make up your own mind based on the information out there as to what's true and what's not. But popular YouTuber Jesse on Fire, who used to be in the MMA space, is much more in the political space these days, is talking about this. And he references sources that have told him that former fighter of James Krause and former teammate of Isaac Dulgarian at Glory MMA is the one making these calls. According to Jesse on Fire's sources, James Krause is a million miles away from MMA at this point. He's investing in real estate. Many people have said that James Krause is the mastermind behind all of this. Even myself, I speculated that myself. But sources, just sources, take it with a grain of salt, but sources to Jesse on Fire say that it is Jeff Molina that is involved with this and not James Krause. And that would make sense because by all indications, James Krause is completely out of MMA, like not even close to MMA at this point, investing in real estate, this, that, and the other. Whereas Jeff Molina, still very much involved in MMA. I believe he's signed with BKFC now. He's still a fighter. And so if there is still, this is just speculation here, if there is still connections to Glory MMA fighters or former Glory MMA fighters that are involved in fight fixing, it very well could be Jeff Molina. This is Jesse on Fire right here saying that his sources say it's Jeff Molina.
Everybody knows he made the call. And again, listen, my information ends at Jeff. Like, I know nothing aside from that about, except for who's making the calls, Jeff Molina. That's all I know. Okay. So if there's a big syndicate behind him, I don't know about you guys. I know nothing except it's Jeff, the one is making the calls. And then, so I would ask, you got to wonder, it's like, hey, Jeff, why do you think they're having you make the calls? I'm just saying, like, why do they have you doing it?
So there is Jesse on Fire. I'll link the video down below. You guys can go watch it yourself and make up your own mind. I'm going to say that a lot because we're getting to that point where it's not all just incriminating information against these fighters and former fighters. We're getting conflicting stories. We have the UFC running D for their own integrity, but it looks like there could be some sort of betting ring involved with UFC fights. Is Dana White involved? I don't know. Is James Krause involved? It doesn't look like it anymore, but his former fighters still are, and that's what makes Jeff Molina seem like kind of the operator for some sort of betting ring that is involved in UFC fights. And furthermore, atrocious, literally terrible UFC fighter, Cedricus Dumas, who's also a terrible human being, in my opinion, criminal, woman beater, violent criminal, to be honest, loses fights badly to other bad fighters and has not been cut. This right here, it says, investigate this, please. Fighter added Cedricus Dumas. Quick break. If you're loving this video and you want more from Fight Society, click that join button down below to become a channel member today, where you'll get access to members only live streams, behind the scenes vlogs, and all the unfiltered stuff that we don't post to the main channel. Back to the video. And given his effort against Dante Williams last weekend, there's other people saying that he could be involved in the betting scandal as well. Now, this is purely speculation. I'm sure that he is going to slide in my DMs again, because the last time I made a video about him about 1.5 years ago, he slid in my DMs with some not nice things to say. Saying, hey, whore, I just seen your punk ass video on YouTube talking down on someone's past. You look like you're scolding. Then you go post on your page. Thank you for always talking shit. You got 130 followers. And at the time I did. But hey, bro, we coming up on 10K subs now. And so, by the way, road to 10K subs, hit that subscribe button down below. But he says, what the fuck you done? Look like you beat the shit out of your mama, even though he beats the shit out of women allegedly. Apparently, I look like I beat my mom. So have a good day talking about it. Trying to chase clout in my past, blah, blah, blah. I'm using autocorrect. So whatever the fuck it says to you, Florida public school system failed his grammar terribly. And I responded with what I thought was pretty funny. I said, damn, so you didn't like the video? Well, shit, man, I get it. It's a pretty embarrassing past to have. I wouldn't want someone exposing it on YouTube either, but the info's public and you're a pro athlete in the biggest organization in your sport. So I don't know what you thought would happen. I'll tell you what, bro, you should come on my channel for an interview and we talk about it. Before you ask, no, I will not pay $100 for an interview. That was in reference to other journalists saying that Cedricus Dumas requests $100 for an interview. Yeah. And then he says, bro, you're right. It's public. Please, I can't even ask you for a payout. You only got 138 people. You went out of your way to make a story about me. Don't even have any oh, fuck, dude. His grammar's bad. Somebody take a look at Florida public schools. You know what I'm saying? But that is not the reason. I have to be honest. That is not the reason that I am talking about his fight. The reason I'm talking about his fight is because before UFC Noche, he said he had $13 in his bank account. $13.96, my bad. I don't want to, cut inches off his dick here. $13.96, not $13. And he went on to say, this is the price of being an adult and paying for legal actions and stuff in your life. I hate to hear people say that people don't struggle at the big scene. Yeah, y'all can laugh about it. I'm just giving y'all something to laugh about. Don't really know what he's trying to get at there. Somebody with $13 in their bank account struggling for money, just my opinion, I'm not accusing him of anything, very well could be somebody that would get implicated in a fight fixing scandal when you are facing legal charges left and right, you have legal fees to pay, and you have $13 in your bank account. So this was his loss to Dante Johnson, not William, sorry, Johnson, Dante Johnson, this past weekend on the same card as the allegedly fixed Isaac Dolgarian fight, where he got submitted. And frankly, it didn't look like he tried to get out of this submission. You guys tell me what you think in the comments down below. The Anaconda starts to get locked up, and Johnson isn't even in the best position to finish the anaconda choke. You would actually want to have their bodies going towards each other where they're like this, and then you start to crawl and hook the opponent's legs so that you can crook their neck and tighten the choke. But here, it doesn't look like it's all the way in. It looks like he's sitting there trying to sell it, this, in my opinion, trying to sell it the same as Isaac Dolgarian. He's sitting there with his hand out, and then he taps. It's like he wasn't trying to fight the hands. He was just sitting there going, have I pretended to fight this for long enough before I tap? And then he gets tapped right there. There's the end of the fight. And the fact that this guy is still on the UFC roster, I know he has clout, but the fact that this guy is still on the UFC roster, despite being a criminal, a terrible fighter, and also having a terrible UFC record and losing to somebody that just started professionally fighting a year ago. While I'm not accusing him of it, same as my previous videos, it's all just opinion and speculation. This seems like a fight from last weekend that went over a lot of people's heads. There was talk about Dolgarian, there was talk about Onama, but Cedricus Dumas himself seems like he could have been involved with this as well. And we move on from the fighter aspect of it. And again, I'm not just saying this because the guy hated on me in the DMs, but he's got $13 in his bank account. He might really need that money, you know? I mean, hey, he can slide in my DMs again. I could throw him a little something. But here we have a big story from the MMA Draw newsletter, who has accurately reported on some big stories in the past, and they have been covering this quite a bit. They're one of the few like reputable journalism outlets versus like YouTubers and content creators that's been following this. And this right here says, behind the scenes, 2 sources confirm the FBI's Sports Integrity Task Force has been tracking suspicious betting activity in combat sports since 2021, years before the Krause scandal broke the surface. What started as a few isolated cases will evolve into a full-scale federal audit. Agents will now comb through every layer of the UFC ecosystem: referees, judges, matchmakers, and managers. And I referred to all 3 of those, referees, judges, matchmakers, and managers, in my video a couple days ago. But they're going to comb through every layer to determine whether any non-fighter personnel may have benefited from manipulated outcomes. Over the next 6 months, the Bureau will issue subpoenas for sportsbook data, commission correspondence, and UFC internal communications. Investigators will cross-reference referee assignments with line movements, studying whether officiating decisions consistently align with betting abnormalities. And here we have Harry Mack referring to Jason House, who I spoke of yesterday, the owner, manager that runs Iridium Sports Management. And just to be clear, almost all of the fighters implicated in this sports betting scandal are signed to Iridium Sports Management. And this right here says, credit to Jason House for taking my call. He maintains he and Iridium had no knowledge of any abnormalities with Dolgarian. House says he's committed to working with authorities and has assured me he will cut ties with Isaac if it's deemed he engaged in misconduct. House also directly addressed the idea that he has matchmaking sway or preferential treatment, and he upholds that he has no familial ties to any UFC matchmaker. He upholds Iridium's stable and preparedness for the only reason they receive these opportunities, and he has no say in matching. Now, some of the background info, people are saying that Jason House has some sort of tie to a UFC matchmaker. It's been kind of speculated here and there. The information that I've heard is that Jason House introduced one of his wife's friends to a certain UFC matchmaker. You guys can figure out who it is. I don't want to throw too many allegations around without confirming the info, but that's what I've heard behind the scenes off record, is that this manager, Jason House, has ties to a certain UFC matchmaker, and that's why Iridium Sports Management fighters get short notice opportunities more than any other fighter stable, and why his fighters get signed to the UFC with very questionable regional wins, whereas really, really good fighters that are not signed to one of these big management promotions like Jason House and Iridium, or to Ali Abdelaziz with Dominance MMA, will not get signed to the UFC. And furthering on the discussion of the referees and judges being involved from my video the other day and from that MMA Draw story, says, update, this is from Harry Mack, update, federal regulators have flagged over 100 UFC fights this year for abnormal betting patterns, including 2 additional fighters on last night's card. Shit is about to get very ugly. Still working to confirm, but it sounds like the feds are moving to audit Herzog's fights. And this right here is Jason Herzog sliding in Harry Mack's DMs, where he says, Harry, your post on November 2nd falsely states federal regulators are auditing my fights and that over 100 UFC bouts are flagged implicating me. The UFC has confirmed directly with the FBI I am not under investigation and my fights are not being audited. You have 48 hours to retract the claim and delete the post, Jason Herzog. And Harry clapped back with, nobody said that 100 fights were flagged implicating you. I was told the feds were moving to audit your fights, and that's why I reported it. I stand by it. Learn some reading comprehension, dickhead. You think you get to call me all sorts of awful shit and demand a retraction because someone came knocking? Fuck you, man. Have fun with the investigation and reread my report and try again. Now, my take on this as to why they wouldn't say they're auditing his fights is because they want to see what happens. They want him to operate. This is just my opinion. They want Herzog to continue reffing under the assumption that he is not under any suspicion under the UFC. I'm sure they want this investigation to be as covert as possible and allow these people to go about their business, potentially fixing fights for the sake of being caught up in this scandal further. The same reason that Derek Minner has not been arrested, the same reason that James Krause has not been arrested. This is a years-long investigation, and it takes a very long time for them to put evidence together. I'm sure that the FBI doesn't want to just blow open their investigation that's been going on for nearly 5 years at this point for the sake of making one referee feel safe and say to the public that he's not being investigated. The other referee that's been called into question is Dan Miragliotta, who has awful stoppages. Jason Herzog has some terrible stoppages of his own. Dan Miragliotta has some terrible as well. Says what happened at the end of the first round of Nelson versus Frivola, which happened on the UFC Vancouver card. I covered that, is one of the many reasons as to why nobody takes MMA seriously. It's a stain on the sport and it just continually makes the entire sport look like a joke. Dan Miragliotta should be fired and there should be massive reform in all state commissions regarding MMA, judging and refereeing. What an atrocity. And this builds on top of what I talked about with referee and judges being flown all over the world by the UFC. I talked about this on Wednesday, being flown all over the world by the UFC, despite having local judges that are sanctioned, thousands and thousands of people that are sanctioned to do this in their local commission. You know, the French MMA Federation, the Abu Dhabi MMA, whatever, California State Athletic Commission, all over the world, British MMA, whatever. They have so many sanctioned local refs that referee fights every single weekend and judge fights every single weekend. But here we have Herb Dean, Dan Miragliotta, Jason Herzog, Mark Goddard. I'm not implicating all of them and accusing them of something, but why are these same 4 or 5 refs being flown all over the world to do these big fights under commissions where they already have thousands and thousands of refs in their local municipality? So take some time, think about that. Why are they flying referees all over the place? And where do the managers fit in here? Because apparently they have ties to the UFC matchmakers. Aljamain Sterling called in to the Ariel Helwani show this week where they talk about Isaac Dolgarian specifically because apparently they have both heard stories of Isaac Dolgarian really putting it on top-level UFC guys like Corey Sandhagen, like Tim Elliott, like Youssef Salal, and then he goes and gets submitted in the first round by Yadier Del Valle, who nobody's ever heard of. I'm not trying to take away from the win of Yadier Del Valle. He is a talented fighter. It just sucks that he's caught in the middle of all of this. This is what they had to say about Isaac Dolgarian's effort.
I had heard stories that he had trained with the likes of Youssef Zalal and Corey Sandhagen and Tim Elliott and top guys and would dominate them in the gym. Like this guy has skills, right?
I've heard stories and I just know that guy cannot tell me for a second that was his best effort whatsoever. Yeah. Even if he was injured, that's not his best effort. But that's why I do empathize. Like the fighters, like we're in the biggest league, organization in the world, the most prestigious and the biggest chance and opportunity for you to make the most wealth that you can in this sport. So, I've always been grateful, but I always known coming up in the sport, I wasn't going to quit my job until I had at least almost 200 grand in my account. And that's when I finally quit my job. I got a bonus, whatever, quit. And I had a house, I was stable and everything. Like some of these guys, they think like either you come in and you're going to be able to I'm in the UFC. I'm going to get paid like I'm in the NBA and the NFL. I wish it was like that, but it's not. So what's the harsh reality? We got to work a second or third job and then use this as a supplemental income. And hopefully you get a good break where you get an opportunity, you cash out, maybe a bonus, or you just win a couple fights in a row, you get to your second contract and things are going your way and you do well, right? So it's a hard position to be in, but just understanding the space that you're in and the life that you decided to take.
Yes, it is the life that they decided to take, but it does say quite a bit that a UFC champion is talking about how fighters need second and third jobs to keep themselves afloat. And then the UFC income is their supplemental income. Of course, Isaac Dulgarian, terrible effort, in my opinion, a rigged fight. And that's part of why nobody can get in touch with Isaac Dulgarian. That's the latest report, is that he has been unreachable for days now, since Sunday. But the next issue that Aljamain Sterling brings up is fighter pay. And that's a big deal. Fighter pay, these guys making $12,000, fighting with injuries so that they can get injuries covered by the UFC insurance. Because if they're not in a fight or in camp for a fight, they will not get that injury covered by UFC insurance, and they won't get paid if they make it to the fight. And that shows you the big risks that these guys are taking for shit low pay. And this brings in the UFC card for this weekend. Gabriel Bonfim going up against Randy Brown in the main event of the Apex, but also his brother Ismael Bonfim on the main card, weighing in 5 pounds over the scheduled limit. The fight's still going to take place against Chris Padilla at a catch weight with a 25% fine on his purse for the weight miss. But you can see right here, in my opinion, Bonfim is very clearly injured in his right shoulder. 161. So there it is. He misses weight at 161 pounds. Of course, there's a weight allowance of 1 pound. So he misses the 156 limit by 5 whole pounds. And then you see right here, the right shoulder is not going to move at all. He's not going to move his right arm at all as he leaves the scale. Let's watch it right here.
61 pounds, the official weight
not
for
moving.
Ismael Bonfim.
Not moving at all, using his left arm to get up on the scale. That right arm is hanging like he's injured. And a lot of people have been talking about this on Twitter. He's grimacing as he gets up to the scale. Does not move his right arm at all. He doesn't make weight and flex like a lot of fighters do. This right here from Daddy Dana at Dana White's Locks says, I'm not a doctor, but his shoulder did not move once while walking, getting on the scale, turning in Winston pain, it appears. Now, he missed weight and he is also injured from what it looks like. And this fight's still going to take place. So it doesn't matter in the UFC if you are fixing a fight and the UFC finds out from the FBI 2-3 hours before, they're still going to let you fight. And here, if you're injured and missing weight, they're still going to let the fight take place. And this is where fighter pay comes into question again. Because if the UFC had better insurance or year-round insurance for these fighters and had better pay, one, they wouldn't have to go into these fights with severe, or at least what appears to be severe injuries, and they wouldn't have to be accepting $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 from sports gamblers to lose fights on purpose, in my opinion. The fighters are put in a position where basically everybody is making a lot of money around them. Dana White is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. These sports gamblers are betting millions of dollars on fights, but then these fighters are taking brain damage, neck damage, struggling with money, like Cedricus Dumas or like Isaac Dulgarian, who talked about financial struggles as well. They're going into fights potentially fixed because they need the money, and also compromised physically because they need that insurance, because they flat out can't afford to get it fixed outside of a fight camp or after a fight. At what point do we take a look at the UFC model and say something's got to change? I'm not trying to be on a moral high horse here and say that the entire UFC system needs to burn like some people want it to happen. Fighters are underpaid, severely underpaid, broke, especially these ones on the prelims, and injured. And they are still forced to go into a life-threatening situation, which is a professional MMA fight. You could get kicked in the head and never see the same, like Michael Bisping. You could get kicked in the head or knocked out and your neck is never the same. Your brain can't function the same. You get poked in the eye and you can never see again, things like that. Something has to change. There's even another layer to this story, because Dana White, gambling addict, as I mentioned in my last video about this, and his ties to Steve Will Do It and all of that, is actually having a Netflix documentary being made about his gambling habits. It's an unscripted Netflix documentary while they are following him around Las Vegas with a camera crew. It says he's the subject of a Netflix doc. He once apparently lost $30 million at the tables, but when the house is owned by your best friend business partners, is anyone really going to make you pay? And that's where things get really sticky here for Dana White, because allegedly, I reported on this back in September, he owes Red Rock Resorts and Casino $25 million. Some people say 30, some people say 50. It's somewhere in the $25 to $50 million range that he owes to the Red Rock Resorts and Casino in Las Vegas for gambling debts. Now, where this starts to implicate the entire fixed fight UFC gambling scandal is that the Red Rock Casino and Resort is owned by Station Casinos. And Station Casinos was founded by Frank Fertitta Jr. and is owned by Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, who are Dana White's best friends, and they were the former owners of the UFC before they sold to Endeavor back in 2016. So is Dana White, and this is me just asking, is Dana White involved with this fixed fight scandal for the sake of paying back his best friends that he owes between $25 and $50 million in gambling debts too? And he even made an appearance a few hours ago on a vlog with Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo, who have a podcast together. This is him right here saying how much he respects the fighters.
Respect all you guys, man. At one point in my life, I believed that I wanted to be a professional fighter and a world champion. You have to wake up and realize, and you look in the mirror and you're like, yeah, you ain't it. You guys are different. There's no other people on earth like you. A world championship football player, world championship basketball player. It's not the same. It's about who you are and how you're built. Movies, sports, world leaders. World leaders, they're all watching you. You guys are different than any other athlete on the planet. Everybody's watching. The actors, the greatest athletes in the world, world leaders. World leaders aren't watching the NBA game on Wednesday night. They're not. They're watching the fight on Saturday night.
So why don't you pay them more, Dana? Why are they being paid so little so that they have to fight injured and potentially accept bribes from gamblers to pay their rent and feed their kids? Tell us. I'm dead serious. It's a serious question. Of course, Paramount bought the UFC rights for 7 years going into 2026, the end of the pay-per-view era. We've talked about that a lot. 44 events annually, 14 numbered cards, and 30 fight nights per year for the next 7 years in a deal that is $7.7 billion for 7 years, which is $1.1 billion a year, exactly double the ESPN deal, because the ESPN deal that they had up until the end of this year was $550 million per year. Now, Paramount is exactly double, $1.1 billion. Now, there's been talk from Dana White about raising bonuses and things like that, but this type of thing, this type of doubling in broadcast revenue, and of course, the ridiculous money that they bring in with Gates, 18 million, 25 million, 15 million. Even they go to like Des Moines, Iowa and get like a $6 million gate. All of that has not changed or even seemed to change the UFC fighters' financial status, pay, insurance, anything like that. But it seems like an FBI audit of the entire combat sports and UFC ecosystem could be the thing that really changes the UFC model. It's actually crazy to think that the straw that broke the camel's back with the way that the UFC treats their fighters is the FBI cracking down. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see something similar to a Muhammad Ali Act come of all of this. It's going to take time. It's going to take years. And the UFC machine is going to continue running. I mean, obviously, we have an event this weekend that somebody is going into injured because they probably need the money and they need the insurance. I think it's time that we have a serious talk about fighter pay again, because Dana White's making millions hand over fist. The UFC is making billions at this point. Sports bettors are making millions, but the fighters that are risking their health are making 12 and 12, or they're making 30K. There's something that has to change about the UFC model, and we might even have fixed fights on the card this weekend. You never know. So let me know your thoughts down below. What can be done about this? Do you think that the refs and the managers and the matchmakers and the judges are involved in this? Do you think Dana White's involved in this? Because they're going to make this seem, Dana White's trying to make this seem like an isolated issue, and it is very clearly not. So let me know your thoughts down below. Do you want more from Fight Society? Like and subscribe below this video. And click the join button to become a channel member today to get access to behind the scenes vlogs and members only live streams.